For me, one of the coolest scenes in the new trailer is the Star Destroyers that are just sitting there ominously. So the first thing I noticed is that they were Imperial Star Destroyers from the Imperial era and not First Order Star Destroyers, which I think is significant. And the first answer is, who do they belong to? Who will they serve in Rise of Skywalker? And I think the obvious answer is Palpatine, Darth Sidious. So the reason I think that it's obvious is because for a few months there's been a rumor floating around for Rise of Skywalker about a Sith fleet that's been hidden away in the unknown regions by Palpatine, and he's just waiting to take control of them. And the whole premise of this theory is that they've just been out there for 30 years, ever since the Battle of Endor, just been sitting there waiting for him to take command. And of course, when the Sith troopers were first revealed, I think a lot of people thought that they assumed that they would be in that Sith fleet. Of course, now we know that the Sith troopers answer to Kylo Ren, which is interesting because we know from, he's a Knight of Ren. He's not a Sith Lord, and Snoke was not a Sith Lord, so that's just interesting that they are Sith troopers that report to Kylo, but that's kind of a episode for another time. So, and also this Sith fleet with these Star Destroyers was rumored to have these super lasers on the front of the ship or on the bottom of the ship, not like planet-destroying Death Star super lasers, but they could deal significant damage. And that shot of that red laser beam just tearing up that planet, I think could very possibly be a super laser-like weapon mounted on one of those Star Destroyers. Of course, the next question after they belong to Darth Sidious is, well, how'd they get there? How has he managed to create hundreds and hundreds of Star Destroyers out in the unknown regions? And the answer is pretty clear if you know a little bit about the backstory of the unknown regions. So in Star Wars and all the books and comics and stuff, it's pretty much well established that Darth Sidious is very interested in the unknown regions. And a very big reason that Thrawn is so high-ranking in the Empire is because he's from the unknown regions, and he is Palpatine's chief advisor when it comes to matters regarding the unknown regions. And we know from the books and comics and such that for basically the last 5-10 years that the Empire existed, Palpatine was putting shipyards, bases, observatories, Star Destroyers out into the unknown regions. So I don't think it's that far out to assume that those Star Destroyers are just sitting there waiting for Palpatine because he had put them there. And, this kind of ties into, what was Palpatine's master plan? Throughout the Star Wars saga, he says, I have foreseen what's going to happen. And you'd think a Sith Lord that can foresee everything would have seen Vader coming a mile away, when Darth Vader picks him up and chucks him down the giant metal shaft. You'd think you'd see that coming if you were all-knowing as he says he is. And so you wonder, did he let that happen? It's also pretty much established that Darth Sidious could feel this dark side nexus out of the unknown regions, and he was very fascinated, and that was the chief reason that he was so interested in that in the unknown regions, is because he wanted to take a hold of that dark side power that was out there and have it for himself, obviously. So perhaps he realized that his current empire was not doing it for him, not good enough for some reason. I don't know what that reason would be, but maybe he decided that he would start over and put all his resources towards finding that dark side power in the unknown regions. And so it is very possible that Vader chucking him down the metal shaft was just a part of his master plan, and he would go out and go to the unknown regions. And I do think that Palpatine's actual physical body died on the Death Star. I mean, I don't think it's a clone. Some people do, but I really don't think so. Because you can see, after he falls down the shaft, if you rewatch Return of the Jedi, you can see this blue smoke or blue power come out of it after he dies. And I would assume that's his version of a Force ghost, a dark side spirit. So I'm thinking he let that happen and he ran away to the unknown regions to kind of stage his return. And I was talking to my brother-in-law Brigham recently, who has been on the podcast before, and he was saying that it was basically just a repeat of the Clone Wars. In the Clone Wars, he made sure that the Republic and the Separatists fought so hard that by the time the war ended, both sides were beat up pretty bad, and the citizens of the galaxy, after so much more, were ready for someone to take control and ready for an iron fist, basically. So he commented that this is just a repeat of the Clone Wars, the First Order and the Resistance fighting for so many years. The citizens of the galaxy are again tired of war. So this is just the prime opportunity for him to just swoop in and take control of everything. So those are just some quick thoughts of mine on those Star Destroyers. And I'll see you guys in the next one. May the Force be with you, always.